Describe in single words only the good things that come into your mind. About your mother?
My mother?
Yeah.
Let me tell you about my mother.
What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain.
Have you ever been in an institution? Cells. Do they keep you in a cell? Cells. When you're not performing your duties, do they keep you in a little box? Cells.
This causes it. This causes it. This causes it. Information overload. All the electronics around you poisoning the airwaves.
You are listening to the High Tech Low Life podcast, a cyberpunk media retrospective. High Tech Low Life contains themes and language not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome back, everybody, to the High Tech Low Life podcast, the woke and broke High Tech Low Life podcast with your hosts, Eric and Josh. I'm Eric.
And I'm Josh.
We, this week, are lucky to be joined by a guest. And I must introduce him properly, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I would say one of when we say friend of the show, I would say possibly one of the longest friends of the show, counting previous shows, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't. Sean jumped on after Mike. Yeah.
And then also, a man of the world.
Yeah.
A man of great experience, and particularly sailing experience. And frankly, one of the best fan fiction writers you will ever lay eyes on. So
yeah.
It is Mike, the sailing guy, who's joining us today.
Hey, comrades. How's it going?
It's great.
Yeah. And he is joining us after a checking notes, 5.5 year absence from our show. He was previously on episode 179 of Creek of the Week, which was January 24, 2018.
No, it was that long ago.
Yes, the
5.5 years, really?
The 20th anniversary show.
That's right. It was the 20th anniversary show. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's sure enough.
Well, Mike is here because, how do I put this? Mike and Josh's, and then therefore my taste seem to run very parallel on a lot of things, and it's weird. And this book we're covering this episode, "When Gravity Fails" by George Alec Effinger, was mentioned. Probably mentioned by us, and then picked up on by you. The point is, you mentioned this book way back in the Creek of the Week days.
Yeah, way back in the day. Yeah. Josh had just mentioned something in passing about like the character Marid, right? And so about 4 months later, I posted a tweet that referred to When Gravity Fails, talking about how difficult it would be to get it filmed.
Yeah, it definitely would. But it's not like a super well-known novel as far as I know. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I would say no. I mean, it's in my mind, it's one of those things that if you've done, it's definitely second level deep, at least.
Yeah, when I look at the list of cyberpunk stories, this one's usually not on it. It's usually fringe weirdos like Mike and us and some guy I'd met on the Pink Fohawk Discord. There's not a lot of us out there.
Yeah,
except for one group of people, which is cyberpunk authors in English.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
all refer to it.
Yeah. It's one of those. I don't know. I guess it would be fair to refer to Effinger as kind of the songwriter.
I mean, you don't need to make a metaphor. You can just say author's author, right? That's a phrase that exists.
Is it?
I have to assume if songwriter exists.
Comedian?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there you go.
Before we dive too deep into the book, though, we're not there yet. We're getting ahead of ourselves.
We are.
It is the year of our Lord, August of 2023, and we have to talk about current events because that's what we've set ourselves up for on this show.
Okay, yeah, I guess we have.
Do you have any current events you want to talk about, either of you?
Well, I've just come back from Tennessee, so I can tell you that the Confederate flag controvery is still in the midst.
Oh, thank God! We're going to be there in 2 weeks, so we'll find out for ourselves and see if it's continued until the beginning of September.
Although I do have to say is that I drove for about 1,200 miles through the Deep South and saw exactly one Confederate flag. So,
that is a change.
Is the controversy waning?
The people who want it to be controversial, it's still controversial.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's not. I have not noticed it on the wane through, say, the Panhandle and the Permian Basin of Texas. Still lots there. You get out to West Texas, it's definitely on the wane, though.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, it's a reference to an oft-cited, almost every episode, cited joke of Creek of the Week. I'm not going to explain it. Just go listen to the entirety of Creek of the Week, and you'll get it.
That's it.
Yeah, you'll get it.
Yeah, if you listen to 20 or 30 episodes, it'll become clear.
Yeah. But yeah, we're going to be in Tennessee. That'll be exciting.
Yeah.
Why? Where? In Nashville or where?
Somewhere between Nashville and Memphis.
Jackson?
No, it's a state park.
It's
a whole thing. We'll tell you about it off the air, but certain listeners will know what we're talking about.
Yeah. I don't know. We can advertise for their show. I don't know. Hey guys, if you want to listen to Astronomica, the podcast we've recommended a few times, you can find out about what we're going to be doing.
Exactly. They talk about it on their show a lot because it's their thing.
It is their thing.
But yeah, it's another convention, and hopefully I don't get sick at this one, which is another thing I wanted to mention. I am losing my voice, so if I sound froggy or cough, I'm going to try really hard not to cough into the mic, but if I do, I'm apologizing in advance.
And audience, if you see only 2 sets of footprints in the sand, that's me and Mike carrying Eric through the end of this podcast.
Metaphor game is on point tonight, Josh.
It is. Okay, I have some news that's directly related to our podcast.
Oh, cool, I guess.
The Peripheral is canceled.
Oh, yeah. That is dystopian
sucks.
News.
Yeah, I don't know.
I was not looking forward to figuring out how to cover it on this show.
Yeah.
But I was looking forward to watching another season of it.
Maybe they could have, really knocked it out of the park. I don't know.
They could have. They could have righted some wrongs. I don't know. Its problems weren't with its source material.
No, I don't know. It's. Did you watch it, Mike? How did you feel?
Yeah, no, I watched it. Actually, one of the things that I really liked about it is the way that they used Western North Carolina.
Yeah,
because it was actually filmed, somewhere around Bryson City, somewhere in there, around Bryson City, Cherokee. Yeah. And yeah, that's a part of the country that I know. My most of my American family, most of my American family is either in South Texas or in the Appalachians, just across the border in Tennessee from that part of North Carolina. So that's like less than an hour drive.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense because I didn't think to look it up while we were watching the show. But yeah, those are definitely not the mountains outside of LA that you typically see.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you feel like the Peripheral represented that part of the country well? Accurately, maybe. Maybe well's not the word.
There were bits and pieces of it that really did ring true. The importance of joining the armed forces, the sort of how that gives you a lot of status in the small town. They kind of ramped the corruption up to 11, right?
Yeah, they did.
But the corruption's real. Yeah, corruption is real.
Yeah, I know. When I'm like, we've talked about this before, but like, I can't watch Ozark because I spent too much time
Well,
at Lake of the Ozarks, and
why-
it's so inaccurate.
What's the matter? You don't like Central Georgia?
Exactly.
Because the first time I looked at it, I went, "Okay, that's Georgia."
Uh-huh.
And they didn't even like get the vibe. I was actually talking to my dad
Yeah.
about this, who spends a lot of time there, like basically
Yeah.
lives there, and they didn't even get like they treat it like everybody's hillbillies there, and it's not true. It's rich fuckers from Kansas City and St. Louis that go there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
during the
Yeah.
on season anyway. Anyway, it takes me out of a show. I can't watch it if it's not at least somewhat accurate.
Oh, how did you feel? How did you feel about the accent work in Peripheral, Mike? I know that I found it to be impeccable.
Oh yeah. No, almost nobody gets Appalachian right. Just
It's kind of difficult.
Yeah,
so, yeah, no, and the gradations of it, right, and the fact that people do a lot of code switching, which which
They didn't really do it in the show.
They didn't do it in the show at all. Yeah, but people will switch their accent depending on who they're talking to, whether you're an insider or an outsider. So
That makes sense. I mean, I kind of do that when I go back to my hometown areas.
Mhm.
Is there any other new? I mean, R.I.P. Peripheral.
yeah,
Just to put a bow on it,
yeah.
and maybe somebody will pick
no,
it up. But
and the other thing too that I feel obliged to mention about the Peripheral is the really bland guy who was like one of the stars of the show was
Yeah.
really hot. He was like hot and bland.
I believe I probably
I think that was.
mentioned. You would think that in one of our coverages.
Yeah.
of
I think we talked about that. Yeah, like
Speaking of which, if you wonder why we care so much, we actually did a little mini series covering the Peripheral on our, I don't know, Johnny 60 sec. Johnny in a Minute isn't really even our
Johnny in a
sister
Minute,
show.
yeah.
It's more like our father show. So check out our Johnny in a Minute feed if you want to watch the Peripheral with us.
yeah, we watched it. Every episode got its own episode.
Yeah,
Make sense? Yeah.
which is kind of the precursor to what we're doing now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
It'll always have a place in our podcasting hearts. All right, we've now plugged all of our other shows.
Yeah, wow, we rarely do that. Let's see. Speaking of small town corruption, a town that you and I both know well has been on the national news.
I forgot about that. That's perfect to bring up. Marion, Kansas newspaper raided.
Oh yeah.
Publisher's mother dies.
Yeah, I do know that. I know that. Here's my connection to that city, and then Josh, I think yours is probably the same.
It is the same, yes, as I recall.
When I was a child of divorce.
Yes.
My parents, one of them lived in central Kansas, the other lived in east central Kansas, and Marion was the dead center spot. So my dad and mom would meet there, exchange the kids, and then we'd go have a fun weekend at our dad's. So I spent many times driving through Marion and never really much else.
Yes, you meet up at that park in downtown, or maybe the Pizza Hut.
It was the Pizza Hut,
And
we were always the Pizza Hut.
Yeah, and so we both spent way more time than any reasonable person should have in Marion, Kansas.
That might be one of the when Josh and I first became friends. We realized we both had the same weird weekend ritual that would have been fucked up if we saw each other once doing that.
It is not impossible that we, were there at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, that totally feasible.
But anyway, to tell the actual story, I don't know why. Why was that newspaper raided?
Well,
I'm keeping it fairly brief, remembering we got to get through an entire book tonight.
okay, so the newspaper was raided because a local business owner reported to the sheriff that her identity had been stolen by a reporter at the newspaper because they were trying to verify a story because she was trying to get a liquor license for her restaurant and had gone through a messy divorce. They had gotten a tip from her ex-husband that she had had a number of DUIs and had her license suspended. Her driving license. There's also been some hints that maybe she's banging the sheriff. The newspaper
speculation.
Yeah, the newspaper had also been investigating the sheriff who had been on the job for like 2 months because he had been forcibly resigned from the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department.
I thought it was Casey K.
No, Casey Mo.
Okay.
Like at his job previously, and it's since come out that he had there was a bunch of sexual harassment shit going on, and that's why he was forcibly resigned.
Yeah.
And the newspaper was investigating this and found out that the city council had not investigated his resume like at all.
What a surprise. Big shock on that one.
Yeah, so small town corruption.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then it was that chief, like he wasn't actually like the point was, why raid a newspaper? I guess
because you think you can get away with it.
Exactly.
But what was the point? Like, were they trying to? What was the ostensible point to stop the? Did they really think a newspaper was stealing identities?
No, they were trying to intimidate them and stop them from
making the story.
Yeah, and investigating, and yeah.
Okay.
And also just to keep their it's that small town bullshit where 5 families run the whole fucking town, and they want to make sure everybody knows it, even if they don't say it.
Yeah. Well, they did not get away with it. Turns out,
no
blatant First Amendment breakings like that are good news. Because I was reading about it all weekend while I was in Texas.
Yeah, it has been really fucking weird to see the name Marion, Kansas all over national, like New York Times. Oh, weird.
And the owner's mother didn't die in the raid, but she died the next day, kind of as a result of the stress of the raid.
That's implied, yeah.
It's crazy, man.
Yeah, it's not great.
Pretty standard police shit. Although I feel like there's always been like an unspoken, we'll leave newspapers alone because, I mean, obviously it seems like a bad idea. That's the first place that's going to tell everybody if you do something shady.
Well, who was it that said never pick a fight with anybody who buys ink by the barrel?
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
God, who was that?
I think
maybe it was Horace. It's like Horace Greeley or something like that.
Well, I will not Google it and back that up.
Yeah, don't worry about it. H.L. Mencken? I don't know.
Well, that's a pretty good dystopia story. I think we can move on from there after that.
Okay, sounds good.
Do you have opinions on it? Let us know. It's just been fun to see Central Kansas in the news.
Yeah. It makes me wonder, is this how people in swing states feel like every 4 years? Where like you're just looking at the national news and you see the diner that you know down the street from your house? Is
the
president's
president's there for some reason shaking hands?
Yeah.
Yeah, whereas we're only in the news in the U.S. when you guys get our smoke from our forest fires.
Yeah, hey, on the upside, I mean, I was looking at it yesterday or the day before, so most of your fires have moved west now, right?
Yeah, the fires in British Columbia are like way, way, way worse.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the ones
to be clear, Mike is living in Canada.
I'm in Montreal. Just outside of Montreal. So yes, we had we still have a bunch of forest fires in Quebec, but all the forest fires in Quebec are in massively uninhabited regions.
Oh yeah, they're like way fucking north by the bay and shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
We could mention the hurricane in LA. That's
Oh, dude, we do not need to mention that. Literally every other podcast in the world is going to talk about it this week.
Yeah,
it's funny, but yeah, it's definitely got plenty of air.
It occurred. It did not lead to an escape from LA scenario. Don't worry about it.
Damn it.
Someday.
All right, let's quickly move on to recommend. Does anybody watch anything they want to shout out?
I have 2 quick ones. One, since William Friedkin died like a week ago, I watched To Live and Die in L.A. for the first time in 20 years. Great fucking movie.
Great movie, yeah.
Boy, that thing pops. I mean,
never seen it.
Oh, it's fucking great. I mean, I hadn't seen it since it first came out on DVD. 25 years ago, and man, it's a fucking banger. And then that set me off on a weird rabbit hole, and I ended up watching JFK, which is also a banger.
I don't think it's been that long since you've watched JFK, because I seem to remember you talking about it on a podcast in the last 5 years.
Huh. I don't remember watching it recently, but I believe it.
Actually, JFK is peripherally relevant to the book, the movie.
Ooh.
The movie is relevant to this book?
Yeah, to When Gravity Fails, yeah.
I'm trying to think of the connection.
Oh,
okay. Well.
Wait, it's relevant to Peripheral? Sorry.
Oh, God. We've gone down the rabbit hole, people.
Yep.
Back into the left.
It's pretty peripheral, but still.
How... Never mind. We can't get into it. We'll spoil the book we're about to spoil.
Yeah.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yep.
I have a short recommendo. I don't even know what's a recommendo. My wife and I wanted to cool off and go to the movies the other day, so we saw Strays, the Will Ferrell voicing and Jamie Foxx voicing dogs.
I've seen the silent trailer for that whipping past my scrolling screen on social media.
It's super dumb, but funny and cute. Whatever. The dogs are super horny. Whatever. It is what it is. It wasn't a waste of our free Cinemark movie ticket, which we still have 10 of.
Sure. So recommendo?
Sure. When it's inevitably streaming and you can watch it for free, recommendo.
Okay, sounds good.
Mike, you got anything?
Yeah, the only stuff that I've watched since I've really been back from holidays is I was catching up on. Actually, it was two gay romance things that came out and were a big deal within the queer universe. Second season of Heartstopper, sorry, excuse me, which I recommend to anyone who wants something that is unbelievably lightweight, frothy, but charming as hell.
Okay.
Right. We are on record loving that shit.
Yeah.
So it's about a bunch of kids, mostly queer, in a British high school.
Okay.
And
wait, is it actual British? Is it actually like a British type high school, or is it like a British high school like in Sex Education, where it's an American high school in Britain for some reason?
It's more British than Sex Education.
Okay.
So the the guys that do in fact wear coat and ties, and it is in fact a guys' high school right next to a girls' high school.
I fucking love shows like that. I might watch that.
And,
British, British young people behaving badly.
Yeah, but it's sort of there's the gay kid and the bi kid and the trans kid and the asexual kid.
They got the whole alphabet.
And, it's like hardcore inclusive. The trans, and the other thing too is that makes it worth kind of watching is that the actors are actually age appropriate, right?
Oh, so really?
If somebody's paying, they actually had to take a break in filming so that a couple of the actors could write their A levels.
Oh, that's cool.
Right? Their school leaving exams. So, so it's not the usual thing where you have somebody who's 28 years old playing 60.
We don't know any shows like that. What are you talking about? I've never heard of such a thing.
Yeah. But very low key, very charming. If you wonder why nobody in the show ever has sex, it's important to know that the person who wrote the book, the graphic novel on which the show is based, is asexual, aromantic. And that actually comes through in a couple places where the author clearly doesn't understand why people would want to have sex, so none of her characters ever want to have sex.
Sure. Well, that seems like an interesting perspective to note.
Definitely a
anyway.
new perspective.
Yeah.
So there are people who talk about, I guess one day maybe we'll want to have sex. Oh yeah, okay. That's the conversation.
Yes,
which is
sex is enjoyable.
That's a totally normal completely every teenager is like that, except for those weirdos in movies and stuff.
Yeah.
That's right. So that if you, but anyway, it is over. It is probably the most charming television show I've ever seen in my entire life.
Okay.
So I would recommend it on that. The other
I will
thing,
definitely give that a shot.
the other thing is only recommendo if it's somehow up your alley, which was another gay. This is a romantic comedy called Red, White, and Royal Blue, where the son of the U.S. president falls for one of the princes of Great Britain, who they keep calling the Prince of England.
Well, that's confusing.
Yeah, it is. So it's kind of
Say
a
the title
political
again?
drama. Red, White, and Royal Blue. It's on Prime, streaming on Prime.
I think I saw Matt McHenry maybe Instagramming or mentioning that on Instagram.
Oh man, is Matt still around? Because he's not Twittering anymore.
Yeah,
He's on
quit
the
Twitter.
gram.
He's still on the grams. He had a really nice vacation last week.
Let's blow his spot up. Give him the,
Did he go to Myrtle Beach again?
He did. Yes. Hashtag gaycation.
Yeah, no, because I mean he goes to Myrtle Beach and where I usually go with my family is just down the coast from there, closer to Wilmington, which Dawson Creek fans might know about.
I think that's up in Delaware.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the one in the other Carolina, but the
yes,
so it's south.
Yeah, but anyway, it's if what you always wanted to see in your life was a really super duper lightweight romantic comedy about somebody from America falling in love with royalty in Europe, but having them both be guys seems like an interesting twist. It's the movie for you. But if you're not, but if the idea of watching Hallmark movies doesn't really go for you, yeah, probably not. Probably not the show for you.
So you described 30 Hallmark
fun.
movies
It's
except
fun.
for the last bit.
Does it have fun, like fish out of water stuff, like what's a crumpet, that type of thing?
They do a little bit of that, right?
Okay.
I feel like Ted Lasso kind of killed that for the rest of the world.
Oh, good point.
Yeah. Yeah, so you have the American kid. They're both in their late 20s.
Sure.
Going to Britain and just getting stuff wrong about London, and then you have the British guy going to Central Texas.
That'll be fun.
Okay.
Because the guy is from the American guy is from Austin.
Oh, okay.
So
As someone who just got back from Texas. I felt like a fish out of water, so gotta imagine a Brit would really feel it.
It depends where you are in Texas.
Yeah. All right, we have got to move forward. There's your recommendos for the week. Take them or go to hell, listeners.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, wait. I have one more quick recommendo that's directly connected to our show. Okay, so the other week we watched Existenz, right?
We did.
Yeah.
We did. And then within like 2 days, I saw another completely random reference to Jennifer Jason Leigh in something. I don't remember what. And then I picked up this book that's been on my list for quite a while and started reading it. And only after half a dozen chapters did I realize how this directly connected to our podcast. It's a book called Fly By Night. It's by I can't remember the first name of the author. I want to say the last name is Price. But it's about the Twilight Zone accident that decapitated Jennifer Jason Leigh's dad, Vic Morrow.
Oh, right.
The helicopter crash.
Helicopter, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And that was a really good, if pretty polemic, and like the guy is pretty clear from the outset. He definitely thinks that John Landis can get fucked because he killed Vic Morrow and 2 young Asian kids for no reason.
Yeah, I listened to a podcast on that within the last year. I think it was
really?
Behind the Bastards. They did an episode on it.
Oh,
Pretty fascinating and infuriating.
yeah.
John Landis should be in jail.
Yeah, he definitely should. One of my high marks of Twitter was getting blocked by his son for making a joke about that.
And less congrats for the families of the people who died. But
well, somebody else made a joke at Max Landis's expense, and I said, and he responded to it as though he didn't get it and took it seriously. And I said, "Oh, don't worry about it. It probably just went over his head. Unlike the helicopter blade in Vic Morrow."
Well, the bright side for you is that block is going to go away soon, and you'll be free to harass him again.
That's true. Good times. All right. Let's talk about this book. Hey, Eric, did you enjoy this book?
Are you talking about the book When Gravity Fails?
Yes, I am.
By George Alec Effinger? I did. I liked this book, but there are some pretty strong asterisks next to that.
Okay. I'm interested to hear those asterisks.
I had a hard time with the casual misogyny. It was rampant and extreme in some places.
Okay.
But maybe that's my 2023 sensibilities, because when I read it the first time, I didn't have a problem with any of that shit, so who knows? Maybe I'm getting soft.
No, I think there's a lot of stuff in the book that you've got to understand that it was published first in 86. And they're
fucking 40 years, like close to 40 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really hope some of our listeners also read this book, and I'm glad we've got Mike here, so it's not just Josh and I yelling in each other's faces like usual.
Yeah.
Because this has a lot of what would these days be considered problematic stuff. I'm curious what other people's takes are. I don't feel like it's outwardly hostile in any way. So, I don't know. I mean, I love it. I love the world he builds. And maybe this is an effect of the narrator that I listened to read it to me.
Mm-hmm.
It got cheesy in some parts, and this could very much be the narrator who had this really like film noir, like slow reading style, which was really cool sometimes and just came off as super cheese other times.
Huh. Yeah.
Did you read or listen, Mike? You're saying
yeah. No, I've done both, right? Because I've had because I mean I read it when it first came out, so which is sort of what I base a lot of my reaction on is how much I loved it at the moment. And like there's a lot now that you know that if the book were written and published today, a lot of stuff would change.
Yeah, for sure.
But I did just out of curiosity go and read some people's reviews of it, and it's like, one person was complaining that it was really gender binary, that people were either men or women. Hadn't he ever heard of NBs and of non-binaries? And the answer was no, he hadn't, because
nobody had.
I promise you. Yeah, I promise you he had not, because A, he's been dead 20 years, and B, the book came out 20 years before that.
That's right, yeah. No, I mean, and I can sort of, at that time the book came out, I was teaching an intro to psychology class, including a section on human sexuality, which I always preface by, I'm about to prove to you that an academic can make anything boring.
Sure.
but I used to go through, and it was the first time that people would have heard of there's a difference between being transgender and transsexual.
Yeah.
Right. Or that there's a difference,
Now, Mike, I understand. I know what you're talking about, but Josh is really dumb. So for his sake, could you explain the difference between transgender and transsexual?
Transsexual, which was the normal word for people who wanted to change their gender from male to female or female to male, through until the 90s, was highly medicalized, right? Completely medicalized, right? It had to do with whether you had surgery or not, right? Because the emphasis, like in the transsexual part of it, that it had.
You get that, Josh? Finally, Jesus, you're so stupid.
I did. Thank you, Mike. Keep going.
Yeah. And whereas gender is more about presentation and interaction, right? And the role and the place that you take in society,
Right. That makes
so that
sense.
you can be trans. Like the rudest thing you can do to somebody who is transgender is to ask them about surgery and stuff, because it's none of your damn business. Unless you're sleeping with them, it's none of your damn business. Right.
I hate how politicians love to focus on that shit too.
Yeah, and so that they do, and it's been a long time since I've heard of anybody referring to themselves or to other people in good faith as transsexual, right?
Yeah.
And which makes sense.
It does.
But there
are a lot of trans people in this book. That's for sure.
There are tons of trans people in the book, and kind of just kind of accepted, right?
Yeah.
Except by the people who are religious fanatics, because religious.
And even though there aren't many of those, I mean, even a lot of the religious fanatics still kind of. It's not like our religious fanatics today. Let's put it that way. I guess we should bring up religion too. That's an important part of this book.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got to set the setting of the book.
Yeah. If you didn't read the book is set. I don't remember. I think I made a note about it somewhere.
2175.
Yeah, somewhere in like the 2170s ish. I will totally believe 2175.
Yeah.
And
specifically say it.
And it takes place somewhere in Pan North Africa ish, and basically the Muslim world, and it's very highly. I mean, it's
basically about it. There are very few non-Muslim characters, and they aren't major characters.
Yeah, and the non-Muslim characters are definitely outsiders and foreigners, and not to be trusted or dealt with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this brings me to the question that I could have Googled, but figured I'd ask on the air. I'm guessing that the author is not Muslim, correct?
Correct.
Or
as far as I'm aware, no, he is not.
Yeah. Okay. I felt like, now I'm not a Muslim, but I do have some experience with Muslims.
Some.
That doesn't make me in any way an expert to talk on the situation, but I felt like it was presented pretty well. Like I didn't feel any Islamophobia in the text from him.
Yeah, no, the author went to Muslim friends and had them read drafts of it before it ever went to the publishers.
Yeah.
Okay.
It felt like he had a real respect for the religion.
Yeah, and also like a lot of the really flowery, formal Arabic, right, which is like obviously in English in this English book.
Yeah.
He also had people, they did it very flowery, right?
Yeah.
They had the most flowery versions of things possible. But those were also run by native Arabic speakers mainly from Egypt.
Yeah.
Pretty sure my narrator was an Arabic speaker because he did or he took some courses on pronunciations because they sounded really good.
Huh. Well, that's nice. Because, I could easily see this book fucking up just some random dude.
Yeah. So, I mean,
there's definitely a lot of Arabic.
Yeah, it's definitely written by an American, and that actually comes out really, really clearly in a whole bunch of things because...
Oh, yeah.
Despite being set where it's set, it's really the French Quarter of New Orleans.
Yeah. That much is
put together.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it is very evident. That is 100%. This is red light district of North American City. And New Orleans absolutely fits the bill.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, I did my undergraduate in New Orleans. So it's, and then, had family who lived there for a long time. And there are just scattered throughout, like when people greet each other and so on, they use really, really, really New Orleans expressions, right? Mm-hmm. So that when people are being really informal with friends, when you're talking about the demi-monde, right? Within the Budayeen, right? The neighborhood. They say things like "Where you at?"
That's true.
Which is just the most New Orleans greeting possible. And when you kind of agree with someone or don't really agree with them but don't want to argue, you say, "Yeah, you're right." And people are constantly saying, "Where you at?" and "Yeah, you're right." And they used them exactly the way people from New Orleans used them to, right? So, and Effinger was in fact from New Orleans.
Oh,
So,
okay. Well, that makes
I
sense.
mean, well, he was from Ohio, but he lived in New Orleans like the last 20 something years of his life. So for me, when I first picked up the book, it was just like I was just sitting there chuckling, right? Because I went, why am I imagining him walking down Royal Chata Street, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as he's doing this walking, and it's like, oh, that's why, right?
Yeah.
Well, now next time
Because
the first time I go there, whenever I go to
You've never
New
been to
Orleans, I'm
New
gonna.
Orleans?
No, dude, we were scheduled to go April 10th, 2000. We had tickets booked, we had hotel booked, and then something happened. I'm not going to say what, but you guys remember, and we weren't allowed to travel anymore. So
yeah, I mean, by the way, the New Orleans, the French Quarter that he's writing about and that I experienced it doesn't exist anymore, right? The entire French Quarter is now just completely touristed over.
Oh yeah, it's like
So
old Vegas. It's a legend now.
Yeah. So
that's cool.
That explains why he's eating. That explains why he's drinking Sazerac all the time.
Yeah. And the actual beginnings of the story were him hanging out in bars in what was then the downriver side, the downtown side of the French Quarter, right? So opposite from the tourist center, the downtown side, which at that point was really in the 70s and 80s was really pretty scuzzy, and not coincidentally also the gay part of the French Quarter. He hung out a lot in that neighborhood, and lived in that neighborhood. And so it was from talking to a lot of drag queens and drag performers that he sort of got that he got sort of the idea for a lot of the trans characters, right?
That makes 1,000,000%. Like, I had never put that together, but that 100% sounds right.
Yeah, and if you don't know, there's a huge, long history of drag and drag performance in New Orleans. And by the way, the biggest drag shows are not for gay people, right? They're for the straight tourists.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I love a drag show.
That's always been a huge part of sort of New Orleans French Quarter life. So even in the touristy parts of the French Quarter, near Canal Street in the uptown side, lots of drag bars, which are
that
not
sheds
for
a
gay
lot
people.
of light on this book.
Yeah. So and also a lot of prostitution, right?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I mean, prostitution features very heavily in this book as well.
Oh yeah.
Okay. You saying that has really illuminated it for me, because I the first time I went to New Orleans was 1998, I want to say.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if that was gone or on its way out by that point, but I didn't. But I didn't hugely experience it. So a lot of the drag and transsexual stuff, like in my mind when I'm reading this book, I am imagining what is the Pattaya, like Thailand, and kind of how there's the very open drag and trans club community, which if that existed in New Orleans, that makes a huge amount of sense.
Yeah, it makes it's still there, but it's. I mean, Katrina kind of wiped out a lot of the grubbier stuff, right? A
lot of it came to Kansas City.
Yeah. Well, it went everywhere, right? It just got spread.
Yeah, that's
throughout.
true. Yeah.
So he's writing about a French. He's using a French Quarter that no longer exists. Which I'm not going, oh my god, I'm that old. But yes, the answer is yes, I am.
Putting it in the Middle East. Now, I have a question. Since we're establishing setting, is it ever explicitly stated what city/country in the Middle East this takes place?
And being a geography nerd, I mean, I can sort of just kind of say three things. Okay, he's called the Maghrebi, right? which means somebody from Western North Africa.
Yeah.
And since if you're calling somebody the Maghrebi to identify them, obviously you're not in the Maghreb.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
So
I think at some point he mentions he's from Algiers.
Yeah, he's
or
from
just
Algiers.
outside Algiers.
That's made clear.
Yeah.
He speaks French.
Yeah.
Right. And has a French last name, right?
Yeah.
His last name is Audran. Is Audran,
Sure.
right?
Makes 100% sense. Had literally not thought of, oh yeah, that's a French name, sure.
Yeah. And Yasmin, his trans girlfriend, right? He a couple of times just kind of casually refers to her funny Levantine accent.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Which makes it seem like, okay, they're not in the Levant, right? They're not in Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, Syria.
Right. Okay. So you're narrowing it down based on.
So narrowing it down, and then they say they're 50 miles from the port.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
And
I like
not so much in this book
within the detective novel.
Right, and we know, and the Hafhaj has traveled 500 miles towards Mecca, but didn't get there. Right,
I didn't think to do the math on that. So you're 100% right.
So, and then he gives up. He comes up with an idea, heads right back home, and by the time he gets home, he's forgotten the idea. The Hafhaj is great, and so probably not in Arabia, right?
Yeah.
The Arabian Peninsula. Right, so that kind of leads. Okay, you're either in Iraq or in Egypt, right?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you're either 50 miles, kind of up the Nile, or 50 miles up the Tigris-Euphrates, right? And there's kind of, not really anywhere else you could be, right, and still be in the Arabic world.
Yeah.
I'm going to argue.
It was very frustrating how he always referred to
Egypt.
it as the city. Egypt.
Yeah, it's always the city. It's always the city.
Yeah, I feel I really feel like it's Egypt more than it is. Well, okay, I feel
I got
like
a North Africa vibe too.
Yeah. Because so much of his talk about his youth and things are coming across the desert from the west, basically, which makes me think it's either Egypt. Could maybe I don't know. You could. Depending on how you want to swing it, you could maybe go for somewhere in Libya, but
except Libya, depending on your point of view, is kind of Maghrebi, not
that's true. Yeah,
right.
There was one part, and I'm looking through my notes on the book, trying to put. Fuck, where is it? Trying to put together how I made some note about how there is a hilarious fucking joke in this book, or at least what my mind immediately runs to as a hilarious joke about, it is a direct reference somehow to, basically, well, I came to Casablanca for the waters.
Right.
And then, and that's basically where we're at. We're at Casablanca for the waters. There are no waters here.
Yeah. No, I mean, so there, but anyway, we are in an unnamed Middle Eastern, kind of North African, maybe Egyptian city. But anyway, an unnamed city in the Arab world. And we're in a particular neighborhood
as in this future.
And clearly one of the most important cities.
Also, it's been established that most of the Western world has fallen into hard times.
It's fallen apart,
Europe and America, both.
Both democracy and communism died in the mid-2100s.
Yeah. So it's an interesting future for sure. One of the things that always appealed to me about this book was, I've seen a lot of cyberpunk stories, and it's always from a white perspective, and it's pretty cool to see one from a Middle Eastern perspective that is, I mean, it's still written by a white guy, but at least it's treated with some respect.
Well, that's the thing that I think, I don't know that, that's one of the things that makes this book important to me. I don't want to say, I don't want to talk for other people, but this book expanded in my mind, what cyberpunk could be. It doesn't have
Yes,
to be
absolutely.
white
Same,
people and Japanese people.
In Japanese,
Exactly.
yeah. And it's hard to. I mean, if you were around and alive in the 1980s when cyberpunk came out, Japan was so clearly on the rise.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
Right. And hard for everybody to imagine now. But if you think about everything, anybody says about China or anybody says about anything else that's like a threat to American economy, it was all Japan. In the 1980s, it was all Japan.
Yeah, absolutely. I've talked about this in classes before, both as a student and teaching classes. Like, you don't remember that 30 years ago, it was Japan that was the threat because they were buying up all our real estate. Yeah. And I mean, like, it's a totally different thing.
Yep. And then sort of in the early 90s, the Japanese economy just completely stagnated. And that whole threat went away. But yeah, huge anti-Japanese feeling, but also just the sense that Japan was, where the future was, which is something that you picked up in the visuals in movies like Blade Runner.
Yeah, I feel like it's important to mention though that those stories are still told from a white point of view. Like there's very few stories where Japan is the narrator's perspective.
Yeah. No. There's tons of anime. There's tons of anime.
Yeah. And I guess the anime counts, but this story specifically is like we said, the Western world has very little to do with it. I mean, it's an important plot point in a way, but it's not really important to any of the characters.
But not really, yeah. No, I mean, it could actually
honestly, the world has very little to do with it. Even the city that the Budayeen is attached to has almost nothing to do with
it. Yeah.
This is the low life of high-tech low life.
Which leads me to a point I definitely wanted to make before we dove into it, is how this is maybe the most high-tech low life type of thing we've covered. Maybe even more than Neuromancer.
Yeah, no, there's definitely... Yeah, I mean, I want to argue strongly that this is as cyberpunk as you can possibly get.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
It is the highest tech as far as
the lowest life.
And the lowest life. In other words, how would really high tech affect people, right? Who are just like worky Joes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Not people who are hackers. Not people who are, running things. Right.
This is 100% the lowest fucking life that we've had to deal with.
Yeah.
with the exception of Case in the first 40 pages of Neuromancer, where he's 2 days from being homeless.
Yeah.
Right.
Marid is like 3 days from being homeless.
Who's that kid that Marid and his crew always make fun of that gets him into trouble? I feel like I feel like he's the lowest life.
Fuad is. I mean, by the way, I want to point out something here, that one of the things that Effinger really does is create characters, right?
Yeah.
All of the characters you run into, right, are really well drawn, right? Really well described, and sort of by the time you're into about chapter 10, what Fuad is going to be like, right? What Bill the taxi driver is going to be like, right?
Bill the taxi driver.
Well,
and completely forgotten about.
Yeah,
and
he's great though.
With the and with the possible exception of Marid, like all of them are, because Marid as a character he's Maghrebi. He's in the future. He's nominally Muslim spectrum, but he is but he is very much in the classic noir, shitty private detective model. I mean, he sucks as a person, but literally every other one of these characters is totally fucking strange for a sci-fi novel. That's because cyberpunk, and this isn't something we've talked about a bunch on this show, but cyberpunk pulled so much shit from noir and mid-century American mysteries.
Oh yeah, Blade Runner. And
I mean, so that's like, but so many of the other characters, like The only other character in this that's anything like anybody else in fiction is Friedlander Bay. Bears a slight resemblance to Gutman in the Maltese Falcon, but only faintly.
Yeah, no, pretty faintly, because Gutman is still pretty much, a hustler.
I say very faintly,
right? Whereas because when you were saying that, I was like, I'd go, oh yeah, what's the name of the guy in The Big Sleep? The guy.
Oh,
in
okay. Yeah.
Right?
Shit. God, if I was in my old house, I could reach over 5 feet, but I can't here.
I'm shite with names, so it's like yeah, right. The detective goes to it's Fernwood. Elwood.
Yes, god damn it.
So you guys can think about that while I ask another question.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've established this is definitely a cyberpunk story, and it's also definitely a noir detective story. Do you think it is more cyberpunk or more noir detective?
Oh, definitely more cyberpunk.
Or is that even a stupid question?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to say that for two reasons. I mean, one is that if you tell people it's a detective story, they're going to get pissed off at the detective story.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah.
Absolutely true.
Because I was kind of leaning the other way. It's like so much a detective story, but you're kind of right. If you send somebody this as a detective story, they're going to be annoyed with all the cyberpunk stuff.
Right. And just also it really isn't the central bit in the story is not the central. If you look at something like The Big Sleep, if you look at any Chandler novel, right, the detective doesn't really change that much from the first page to the last page.
Yeah.
Marid changes hugely from the first page to the last.
Sternwood. General Sternwood.
Sternwood.
Jesus Christ, sorry, that was killing me.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, no, he reminds me much more of General Sternwood, right?
Yeah.
Or even one of the characters in Chinatown, right, where he's pulling all the strings, right?
Yeah. Okay, I could see that.
Yeah, Friedlander Bay is a fantastic antagonist.
Fantastic.
Character. I loved him so much.
Yeah. By the way, for listeners, Friedlander Bay is the head of not all of the crime in the city, including the Budayeen, but he's one of the big crime people. He's one of the big crime bosses.
Yeah.
Maybe the biggest crime boss.
Okay, and that has gone into more in the sequel books, as I recall.
Yeah, it does.
Which I've not read any of. So
I did not. I specifically did not, even though I wanted to, just immediately start. What is it? The second one's Fire in the Sun.
Fire in the Sun.
As soon as I finished, but I specifically didn't because I didn't want to pollute.
We're gonna get to him, I'm sure.
Yeah, what I was going into here. So, starting sometime the next week or two, I'll start that again.
Yeah. No, because I read when those came out. I read them as they came out, as they were published.
Lucky.
Yeah.
I was 5 years later.
Yeah.
I
got into cyberpunk because of an anthropologist. So there you go.
Fair.
Who handed me a copy of Mirror Shades, and I went, wow, this is so cool.
Mirror Shades is something we'll have to cover.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do Mirror Shades at some point.
Okay, so I've got to ask: is what we've been talking about? Like Josh had a specific question he came at both of us with before we started the show. Should we do this now? Before are we actually going to recap this whole thing? What do you think, Josh?
I honestly don't know. I don't know how.
It's tricky because it has the form of a Raymond Chandler detective novel.
Yeah, it's very consciously.
Yeah,
it's very consciously structured as a Raymond Chandler, or even actually, it's more than a Raymond Chandler novel. It's more structured like a Hammett novel, specifically. The Continental Op, the way it kind of drifts away from any kind of story for 15% of it, and then comes roaring back.
It's true. Right, whereas with Chandler, everything is on topic. You just get lost, right?
Yeah,
I did notice about this book, towards the end, as I'm looking at the time that's left, and like Marid's just getting a drink at a bar. I'm like, what the
Yeah,
fuck,
he's just
dude?
hanging out with his fucking buddies.
You've got like 40 minutes left in this audiobook.
Look, he's getting
figured out.
See, that's the thing. That's the thing that makes me say it is specifically more structured like a Continental Op novel, because Hammett was getting paid by the word by the chapter.
Yeah.
So he was like, "Yeah, I don't know what's going to come next. So we're going to have the op hang around and have a drink with that lady he met 3 chapters ago, and then things will kick off."
Right.
I feel like Effinger really loved the world he created and the weird characters he put in it.
Oh, absolutely. And he should.
Yeah. So, Josh, you had posed the question: is this cyberpunk? I feel like Mike's definitely given his opinion. Just to be contrary, I'm going to say no.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to throw in one more thing that's sort of definitional for cyberpunk, right?
Sure.
Which is that you've got high tech, low life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And drugs, mind altering drugs.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I don't think there's any novel written in the last half of the 20th century, right? Apart from
it's heavy on the
more drugs are done.
We haven't mentioned the drugs yet, but there are a lot of drugs.
There are a lot of drugs.
But I think there are actual other things that are necessary for cyberpunk. I think there's the concept of body, not necessarily body modification, but what it is to be human when faced with body modification or artificial intelligence or virtual reality or whatever. And I think this book definitely touches on that pretty heavily with Marid's hesitance to get any modifications,
right?
In a world where it feels very commonplace.
Yeah. He's specifically, I don't know. It seems like he's almost singled out because he doesn't have any modifications that they have to improve or change. He's got a virgin brain.
Well, what When Gravity Fails does not have, right, is that there's no hackers.
Nope.
Right?
No, there's no hackers, correct.
There is a bunch of, futuristic technology, but it's not like the people in the Budayeen, right, in this, red light district, really have advantage of it, except for body modification.
Yep.
And that, you get hints of there being like major advances in transportation and other things, right? Sort of, and later on, you sort of get the sense, okay, why is there no internet? Well, no, everything broke down, right?
Yeah.
So that there's no, the U.S. broke down into 20 different countries, right? And they all kind of sealed themselves off. Right,
which is going to happen, by the way.
Yeah,
if it had been written 7 years later, it would have been described as balkanized.
Balkanized, that's right.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, people, this is written in the 80s, but everybody does in fact have cell phones. Although people sometimes
I was going to point that
have
out.
Them.
They got what William Gibson failed to get, and everybody actually has cell phones in this. Or they're not cell phones; they're like portable.
Yeah, they're
for some reason I imagine them as like pods that they.
Yeah, whatever it is, put them in your pocket. You clip them on your belt.
Yeah,
right.
Like cell phones in the 90s,
like cool people,
like cell phone in the 90s. Yeah. In the later books, you do actually get some more stuff about connecting to the internet, right?
Yeah. And if I remember right. In the future books, there's at least some references to like suborbital flights and like
that's right.
Really fast movement between continents and stuff like that. But it's negligible.
Yeah, but for example, when Marid in book 2 travels back to Algeria, he takes a bus.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Right. He does not. He does not take a suborbital flight.
Yeah.
Right.
That is strange because
although Friedlander Bay
does. The city.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. When he ventures into the city and he's at the rich German's house, that he doesn't mention any particularly impressive technology anywhere. I mean, other than the stuff that's happening in people's bodies, which is appears to be cheap and plentiful, because even like the poorest prostitutes have access to body modification.
Right.
As far as anything else, there's not much on display. There's not even like Trideo calls or video phones or anything like that for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't. And when you go to when they're in the police station, well, he actually remarks about how old-fashioned the technology is at the cop shop, right, at the police station.
Yeah. The one time he uses a computer in the entire book, it might as well be a room full of file cabinets.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
He's browsing, like, there's literally no reason it couldn't have been written in the 1940s and involving file cabinets.
Right.
Yeah,
but true. But it was written. I mean, at the point it was written, I had been using a little computer for 6 years. Right. So it wasn't that they weren't around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was playing BC's Quest for Tires at that point on PC.
Yeah.
Maybe a little Centipede action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to ask, Josh, you're the one that broached the question, is this book cyberpunk? What is cyberpunk? We haven't really gotten into it so much in past episodes, mainly because, a lot of the stuff we cover isn't strictly cyberpunk, and I don't feel like we want to limit ourselves too much in that regard.
I absolutely agree. We shouldn't limit ourselves. But one of the things as I was reading this book that made me think, oh, this is the episode to bring this up in.
Okay.
Is like one of the really common themes throughout so much of the stuff we've done both on this show and previous shows is stuff like AI. Okay, AI does not exist in this book as far as, it doesn't exist. Doesn't matter.
No.
Computers, like I said, might as well be a fucking file cabinet.
Yeah.
Okay. Cyberware. One of the common, super common things as far as cyberware are like cool fucking blade arms or guns implanted. All this book has is brain mods. And then
and sex change.
And very common
sex change.
Plastic, cosmetic, gender affirming. I don't know how to cover all that surgery, but there isn't a bunch of the common cyberware stuff.
Right, but the brain mods do cover a lot of the stuff that typical cyberware does.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Absolutely true, yeah.
Other things that are hugely common in stuff that we've covered and things that I consider borderline intrinsic to cyberware are corporations. Okay? There are no corporations in this book. There are no governments.
Except Friedlander Bay.
Yeah. There are no governments in this book outside of the police. It's never a point of interest.
There's the Eastern European governments that are fighting. There's the German government. I would say that just calling the police that hand waving them isn't fair, because I feel like the police very much are government.
Yes, but there's not the I guess I'm in this sense. I probably wrote that poorly. I guess there is an overriding authority that somehow should be disobeyed or fought against, where corporations in some books or governments in other books fulfill the same role. Does that make sense?
It does.
And there's not any of that in this book. Now,
I do feel like a little bit.
I will absolutely go to bat that this book is fucking cyberpunk, and it's great cyberpunk. I mean, Effinger is a really good fucking writer. The book does amazing stuff with expanding kind of what cyberpunk can be in terms of a non-Western or Far Eastern version of reality. But so much of our other stuff that we've covered in this book, and so many of the things that are almost shibboleths in terms of cyberpunk, don't come anywhere near this. It's got nothing to do with them.
Now, Josh used that word shibboleth, which I am very familiar with, but I know Mike is a little slow. So for him, will you explain what that means?
Remember that my father was a minister and I had to learn Hebrew, so not a good...
the one guest where that is actually the exact wrong answer. Okay, Shibboleth would be shit. I don't remember the specific verses that go with it, but Shibboleth would be in this instance a code word or identifier symbolizing, like, say, what are some historic examples of shibboleths? Shibboleth, the word itself, is a shibboleth.
Yep.
Like, say, okay, so say you are on guard duty late at night and you're in the army, right?
Okay,
and
picturing it.
Yeah, okay, picture it. It's very late at night and you hear some noise and you say,
who goes there?
Yeah,
That's
who
exactly
goes
what I would
there?
say.
And the person answers Hans.
Oh, okay.
And you're in the American Army and it's World War II.
Okay.
Okay. On the other hand, if they say John,
I don't know where you're going with this.
Okay. Shibboleth is in biblically, there were like Samaritans and people who lived, north of Jerusalem,
who had a different accent, basically,
and they couldn't pronounce sh.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So instead of saying sh, they would say s. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So to detect whether or not somebody is a Samaritan or you would ask them to say, "Hey, what's that word?" And they say, "Subboleth." And you go, "No, it's Shibboleth." And then you sling at them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, not the answer I was expecting.
So like in Northern Ireland, they would ask people to say the letter H. And if they said H, they were Protestants, and then they said H, right?
H.
That doesn't work anymore. By the way,
Yeah, my wife says H.
Yeah, so H meant you were from the South,
Protestant or Catholic.
Well,
is she from the South?
Southish. I mean, she's more from the South than she is from the North.
She's from the Southeast. Put it that way.
Yeah. So that was a way. So Protestants would say H and Catholics would say H.
Okay, I get it. So what you're saying is that these things are like identifiers of.
Identifiers.
I feel like you could have just used the word identifiers.
I mean, I guess I could have. I didn't realize. It didn't occur to me that some of our audience, including Mike, might not know what shibboleth meant.
Only Mike. I mean, I knew.
Or actually, here I'll give you one. If you want to know whether somebody is from the mountains of the southeastern United States, ask them to give you the name of the mountains. And if they say Appalachia or Appalachians, they're not from there.
No.
Okay.
Right? Because if they're from there, you say Appalachia.
To say what they do with their clothes when they're dirty and they say wash, they're foreigners.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's correct. Because you have the intrusive R?
Yes. I get it. We spent way too much time on it, but I've
but there's today. But yeah, so I think that if people were to pick up when gravity fails today, they kind of have to be warned that this is cyberpunk, but it's not the cyberpunk you're expecting. Because I think we really super got influenced by the Japanese high tech kind. By the way, one other place where you do really see the high tech is weapons, right? Because remember,
needle guns, seizure guns,
and the person who does use a revolver and bullet, or what does he use? Is it a revolver? Anyway, a pistol and bullet.
Yeah.
It's like nobody's ever seen one before.
It was archaic.
Yeah, it's a Walther PPK and like using like bullets. What?
That's true, but I would go back and say that I think all those little things that you were discussing, like the cyberware and the Orientalism or whatever, is not.
Edward Said, get into it.
I think those aren't. Those are like dressing on the underlying what cyberpunk is, which is now the one thing you brought up, the not having an authority to fight against. I think that is intrinsic to almost all cyberpunk, whether it's corporate or government, whatever. And I do think they have that in this book. I think it's the crime bosses and it's the police, so it's localized, but it's still an important part of the story. All the other stuff,
notice the police are part of the crime bosses, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. It's just this miasma of corruption is what they're kind of fighting against, and there's a little bit of religious oppression that comes into it once in a while. Although I wouldn't say that's like a main part of the book, but they're definitely rebelling against a society that is built to keep these people in poverty, right?
Right.
Can we agree on that?
Yeah.
And as far as what I think is the other main part of cyberpunk, which is the the philosophy of what it is to be human versus machine,
consciousness of what it is to be human.
I think it absolutely gets into that too, with Marid's reluctance to get modified, and everybody else's, like, it was pretty not controversial, but we talk about gender and non-binary stuff all the time these days, but in the 80s that was pretty
it was fucking wild.
Yeah, it was quite a conversation to have, and like people in this book are going back and forth, for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
So
I
think it hits all the marks of cyberpunk, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't disagree, but I think it's an important conversation to have because so many of our other shit, so many of the other things we've covered on this podcast have been very much focused on computers and AI and corporations and that stuff, which, I think can be, at least, an important part of cyberpunk.
Yeah.
But, and especially, this book clearly has exactly fucking 0% fucking neon and mirror shades.
Yeah.
Correct.
Which I think if you...
Marid spends half of it in like a traditional Afghan.
He's annoyed because he's wearing a fucking robe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And keffiyeh.
Yeah, keffiyeh. Yeah.
But it still feels like it, Like it still feels... I still get the same vibes.
I absolutely agree. I think anybody who makes an argument that this isn't cyberpunk is 100% fucking wrong. But I think this is the episode to bring it up in. Because, it's missing a few things that a lot of people consider, and, things that I reflexively say, oh yeah, cyberpunk. You got computers, you got AI, corporations run the world, and that's, close to top of my list as far as stuff that often signifies cyberpunk.
Yeah, but I feel like that is just skin on a...
Set dressing?
Yeah, set dressing or skin on a skeleton that still exists for this book. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, all that stuff is still here. It's just in a different form.
I agree, but I felt that this
that
was
doesn't
the
make
show.
for good podcasting for us to agree. So I'm going to change my stance.
Okay, good. Sweet. Maybe we can hit the front page of r/cyberpunk this time.
Oh God, I don't want to be there again.
No,
does this make sense? And this argument make sense to you, Mike?
Yeah, no, I think it does. I think that one of the other ways to look at it is well, this is jumping ahead for you guys, right? Because you talk about influences later on, and I don't think Altered Carbon would exist, right, as a book.
No,
without these books, right?
So yeah, Altered Carbon is definitely in the same vein, huh?
Yeah, so that you've got, and you have a whole. Altered Carbon is just kind of the best of the bunch, right? But you have a whole strain of cyberpunk that builds on this.
Yeah,
and this kind of goes back to this isn't a cyberpunk book that people read, but it is a cyberpunk book that every cyberpunk author has read.
Yeah. Hey, here we go. It's the Velvet Underground of cyberpunk books.
There you go.
Yes.
When you're back to the songwriter thing.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. There is a really common. I don't know who came up with it first, but only 10,000 people ever saw the Velvet Underground live. But every one of those 10,000 people started their own fucking bands.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that
sounds good.
Yeah.
You know what? I do want to say right now we are at a tight. Well, we're slightly under a tight 90 because we took a break. But are we going to actually do any kind of recap?
I want to throw in one more background thing just because I feel like I want.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is okay. I was in fact. I just moved back to Quebec. I was living in Montreal when this book came out, or living in Montreal when I picked up this book. And Montreal, it's Canada, but it's also a French-speaking city. And we get anything that's a number one hit in Paris will become a number one hit in Montreal.
Yeah.
All right. So the thing that was really hitting big in Paris and therefore hitting big in Montreal at this moment was a type of music called Rai, R-A-I, which was Algerian.
Yeah.
Essentially Algerian pop music, but very, very, very Algerian. Yeah. Right. The musical forms were Algerian. And so that like Cheb Khaled was like number one in Montreal. If you went to the club for dancing, which I did.
That's fucking cool. Yeah.
You would, there would be some techno, some Euro techno, and then some other stuff. And then there would be Rai, and the dance floor would fill when this Algerian stuff came on. And so I had like a whole bunch of Algerian vinyl. Well, it was mainly actually vinyl of Algerian groups, singers.
Parisian Algerian vinyl.
They're all pressed in Paris, right?
Yeah.
But there was a whole Rai section in any record store that you went to in Montreal. So I was listening to a lot of this Algerian, and it was 95% in Arabic and then 5% in sort of Parisian slang, with a lot of Arabic thrown in.
Mike, if you could send me any example of that, I might tack it on the end of this episode if you think we wouldn't get copyright issues with it.
I'll send you something of the era, which is actually the song. I think I've said this to you before, like ages ago, which is it's the song in my head as Marid is walking down the streets of the Budayeen.
Oh, that's awesome! I would love to tack that on to the end after the outro.
Yeah, and it actually it's a lament because his girlfriend's left him, but it has a line. I can't stay up until midnight, and the song is till Hatal Minuit, right, until midnight. I can't stay up until midnight anymore because I'm sick. All right. What's his name? What does Marid's name mean?
Oh, right. Yeah. It says it in the book. I can't remember, but it's definitely about being the sick child or something.
Sick. Yeah. And the word that's used in the
illness.
song.
Yeah.
And the word that's used in the song, because I'm sick, is Marid. Right?
Marid?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Send me that. I want to hear it for myself, and then I'll put it in the show if I can.
But yeah, no, it's definitely in Maghrebi Arabic. Yeah, for everybody else who doesn't know, I started off life as a linguist, doing Spanish historical linguistics, so I had to learn Maghrebi Arabic. I don't do linguistics anymore.
That is super interesting. It had never once occurred to me that the cultural osmosis between like Montreal and Paris would result in Algerian music moving over to Montreal.
Yeah.
But it absolutely makes sense. I took
colonizing fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I took an ethnomusicology course from an Algerian guy. So we got a bunch of that shit in the class. He also taught a really fun anthropology of violence course, which was about mostly like uprisings and things like that. It was a very cool course.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to present to you, fine gentlemen. Let's do. Can we do this? The second episode in this When Gravity Fails series, doing a recap.
Sure. We'll try our hardest.
Well, actually get to
Cram
the
it
book.
all in there. Yeah, I feel like we've set the scene very well, but we're already deep into this, and
this.
I can't.
Well,
edit
I
out
mean,
this
I
much.
mean, in some ways, I think that's right, because it is kind of a book that you immerse yourself in. And when somebody asks you what happened, it's like Marid goes through trouble.
Who cares?
Right?
Yeah. It's who cares. There's a bunch of murders. Yeah,
there's a bunch of murders, and Marid solves them.
But there are specific points in the book that I think would be fun to go over with you guys, because the book has cool shit happening, and talking about it in these overarching vague terms doesn't hit any of those specifics. So let's get into those specifics next week.
But I'm an academic. That's what I do.
Yeah. we both got the same urge. Wait, what are we doing without context? We need 500 years of context at least.
Well, guys, we've got a tight 90 of context, so
okay.
We could lead into the next episode, get into some of the deets, hit some of the down and dirties, and have a good amount of context to go with it.
Hey, Eric, good job running this podcast.
Somebody's got to.
What a good comrade.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I think we're going to kind of call this episode. We'll go ahead and do our outro stuff, and then pick up next week. For us, no time will have passed at all. So, Mike, is there anything you want to plug? Do you want to plug your socials or a particular cause or something you're interested in? No, you don't have to.
I'm actually withdrawing from online life. So
fair,
smart. That's smart. Yeah, clever.
Because I said, wait a minute. 90% of the time I get involved in any of this, it just makes me mad.
Yeah, I have been fantasizing, like straight up fantasizing about just taking myself off the market. Like no more social media, no more streaming services. Like if I want music, I will go buy a record.
There are people online who are wrong. Who will correct them?
That's
exactly.
It's important that they know.
No, I mean, and it's also one of those things. Is the first thing that you learn when you I am actually. I have the letters to prove it, but right, I am actually an expert, right?
Yeah.
Recognized by the government and the courts in Canada as being an expert on certain things. Called as an expert witness and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And man, you never want to post about anything you know anything about.
I know.
Because some moron will contradict you and then say, what are your sources? And you kind of go, well, the books I wrote, I guess.
Okay. Do you want a list of the articles that I've published in academic journals?
And
was I published on this exact subject?
Yeah.
I don't have those kind of credentials, but I was trying to explain something to somebody the other day, and they were like, I just don't think I agree with you. And I'm like, well, the reason you don't agree with me is because smart motherfuckers have written books about this, and I am some asshole on the internet trying to condense that down for you. But trust me, there's something here, and I could give you those books, and you would ignore them and never go read them. But there's something here if you dig a little deeper, my friend.
Yeah,
and I don't know how to express that. But yes, the internet is bad. It is destroying us all.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's where you get this podcast, so stay on it, please, everybody.
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
Feel free to bleep this out, but remember when you were cited by Jordan Peterson, Mike?
Oh my God!
I've not heard of this.
By the way, more than once.
Yeah.
If you need me to bleep this out, I will. But I desperately need context.
Yeah.
Or we can do it between episodes.
Good times. Being an expert on the internet is terrible.
Yeah.
Although, I don't know, maybe being a normal person is worse at this point. It's hard to say.
It's hard to say. It's pretty bad. Yeah. I will say I do enjoy Discord. I can really narrow down the stuff I want to see, and it's been like the social media that I actually want. So
yeah. And
I know Discord has its own problems. Don't get me wrong, but for me, it works better than anything else.
No, I was talking to my grown-up niece, and I told her, she said, "Are you on Twitter?" And I said, "Yeah, only for Dawson's Creek."
Smart.
Way to be. Like that.
Speaking of which, can I just give a shout out to Dawson's Creeps, or I guess they're now
the
boob tube. What's
Boob
the
tube?
show?
Yeah.
They're living the
They went to Wilmington,
They went to
Delaware.
Did they really?
Delaware? No.
I was gonna say, what the fuck are you talking about? It just looked like they're
North
living the
Carolina.
dream, and they're
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They went to
And that-
Delaware.
Yeah.
Did the fun Dawson's Creek tour. Saw the ice house.
one day it'll be us.
Yeah, we really should do that, man.
I know,
Wilmington's
man. I got-
super nice. Wilmington is super nice.
I've actually looked at tickets and just couldn't pull the trigger because things were going
No,
on.
I mean, no. What you want to do is you want to combine it with like a beach vacation, right? And go to one of the beaches just north of Wilmington.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
And-
We can discuss this all
Okay.
the time.
All right. So if you're gonna shout them out, I'm gonna shout out Dawson Black.
Yes,
Because I have
Dawson
been-
Black is still
I have
great.
been loving
Yes.
those guys.
Those guys
Right.
are
God,
So-
I
up?
love their fucking show. I only wish it was every fucking week. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
But
both have
He
lives.
recently tweeted they're getting back to regular postings.
yeah.
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 The Dawson's Creek fandom on the internet is going strong, and it's basically the only good thing about the internet. So
Pretty much, yeah. Like
thank you to all those.
Well,
people.
yeah, but again, yeah, and then there's for me the dark side of Dawson Creek Online, which is the hatred of Dawson, and it's just like, no, I run into enough hatred in my life. I don't need yours, right?
You've convinced
Yeah.
me. You've convinced me that Dawson doesn't deserve the hate. I'm a convert.
He's a
Dawson
doofus.
spent a good part of his, teens as a fucking douchebag and a doofus, but he doesn't deserve us to dislike him. I mean, look, we all made mistakes.
We did.
Yeah.
And also, I have to point out right now, it is time to stop talking about Dawson's Creek.
Okay, it is.
We have to end this episode. Check us out at Johnny 60 Seconds on X. And, we also have a YouTube channel that's growing in popularity at about 1 user a week, which is very exciting. So check us out on YouTube at, I believe, High Tech Low Life.
And I am, of course, at Ace_Collins on X. And Eric is at The Frog with a 0 on X.
We also have a Patreon. Actually, what I really want to pimp is I set up a speak pipe. So if you want to send us a voicemail, go to our Linktree.
Sweet.
Which is like Linktree/HighTechLowLife. And leave us a voicemail if you want to hear your voice on here. Ask about cyberpunk. What do you think about all this? What is cyberpunk to you? Just get into it. We'll play your voice clip and then we'll talk about it and we'll all be best friends. So until next week, that's all we got.
Mike, please say bye as well. Bye!
Bye.
This has been the High Tech Low Life podcast. Find us on Twitter at Johnny60Seconds. Email us at hightechlowlifepodcast@gmail.com. And find us on Patreon at patreon.com/hightechlowlife. Theme music provided by Nia Lore at nialore.com. Thank you for listening.
Excuse me, Robo. Any special message for all the kids watching at home?
Stay out of trouble. نزيدشي نعشق راني سوفري يما جيتي نسهر حتى المنواي يما زيدشي نعشق راني سوفري يما زيدشي نسهر حتى المنواي نعشق راني نسوفري يما جيتي نسهر راني سوفري يما زيدشي نعشق راني نسوفري يما جيتي نسهر راني لا بغيت يا ليل من البلاد ما زيدشي نعشق راني سوفري يما جيتي نسهر راني لا بغيت يما زيدشي نعشق راني نسوفري يما جيتي نسهر حتى المنوي نعشق راني سوفري يما جيتي نبكي راني لا بغيت يما زيدشي نعشق راني سوفري يما زيدشي نبكي راني لا بغيت يا ليل نزيدشي نعشق راني مريض يما نزيدشي نسهر حتى المنوي يما نزيدشي نعشق راني مريض يما نزيدشي نسهر حتى المنوي